Welcome to a Tuesday evening. For this session, we are going to talk a bit about the Circuitpython extension and what I've done lately with it. First of all, since I got kind of tired of telling everyone how to fix the thing all the time, over and over the same things, I decided to take over it and put the fixes in myself and republish it. That turned out to be a bit of a multi-step process. First things I did was to make sure that I got the Visual Studio Code extension to actually compile. Now, when I did this the first time, I had trouble. NPM problems, yarn problems, you name it problems, right? So I went back to the drawing board and redid it all again. And this time I have it all working flawlessly. Yes, there's still NPM modules in here that are requiring updates, but overall, I've brought up everything up to snuff to the same level as Visual Studio Code itself. Now, if you're not aware, if you actually go to help about in Visual Studio Code, you get this guy. So you can see in here what version Electron is, 32.2.1, which to me is an update. I'm actually on 32.2.0, so next time I publish, I will update the Electron. Node.js is at 2018, and the corresponding NPM, I can't remember what the number is for that one. But there you go. So I brought all this up to date, and I removed yarn because yarn was just interfering with the build process. This particular Visual Studio Code you see right here is the one I've been working to run it. So I have a profile called TypeScript. It's specifically designed, and you can run npm in here, right? It's also, I created a GitHub branch for that. So I'll just bring the browser over here for a sec. So we have this here. And I've been updating and modifying various files and been putting out releases. So my current release for Visual Studio Code extension, and I call it extension V2 in Microsoft's Marketplace. Circuitpython space V2 in Marketplace. I'm at 0 to 8 at the moment, and it is up to date to 9.2.1 CircuitPython. So when the next CircuitPython comes up, I will update it. I will update the Electron. I will update all the stubs and builds. And then what I've done also is tackled some of the problems in the extension. The first one was that bash shell script. So if we go here in this one and we go and look at the scripts directory, the original file was this thing, buildstubs.sh. Okay. And this was the original thing. It called a bunch of stuff, did a bunch of stuff, blah. Pretty simple looking. Okay. I did some modifications to it. I updated a little bit so that you can specify up here the version. After doing it, I mean, it still works, but I wanted something in par with the Python file it calls, which is known as well, I call it now buildboards.py. It used to be called build_stubs.py. Yeah, naming conventions. So with the help of some AI, and you can see my AI window over here under my picture a bit, I managed to rebuild this whole file. And then I turned around and I rebuilt the buildstubs.py file, this one. And this included speedups, it included functionizing things, it included logging, and it included things like error catching for things that might happen. And so, of course, the file got much bigger, right? But when I run it all now, which I've done already today, it was impressive at how fast it can do things. It doesn't mean that bringing down the CircuitPython repo in that was any faster. No, just the processing of certain things like the board list and stuff like that. So once I had this better working, I tackled the building of the boards, otherwise known as metadata.json. That's that file that you'll find in the boards directory. So if we go up here and find Mr. Boards, we find this file here. Now, currently, when I build the metadata.json, I don't build it in its compressed form, or sorry, its non-human readable form. I build it in its readable form. So I had to tackle a number of problems in here, and let me show you on another Visual Studio Code the issue. So this is just a test profile for CircuitPython, and currently I have Joe's version installed. Okay. Now, if we go down here and we say pick a board, we get this type of list. Notice all this colon, 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 colon. Well, what this is there's boards there. There's a whole bunch of boards here, but they're not displaying properly. So I changed it. And what we'll do here is just get out of this folder and we'll change the extension in this test. I'll now disable this one and I will bring up mine with its fixes in it. There it is. Enable. We'll go up here and we'll say open folder again. I'm just opening up a PicoW as a reference board. Okay. Now when I go here and load this, notice our list. It's actually now stuff like this I'm still working on. It has to do with a file in the CircuitPython called the MK file. It defines a bunch of parameters for it, like what is the USB vid, what is the USB PID, what is the manufacturer, what is the model, that sort of thing. And this is a sign that someone put something weird in it. Okay? Now, but the list overall, pretty darn good. Now, according to the web page, there's 558 boards. But of those 558 boards, at the last thing I checked it with them, there's 3 that are pseudo-published in the sense that they're in the repo, but they're not ready actually for real-time use. So their MK files aren't correct. Then there's another 4 boards that have manufacturer unknown. And I think these are more boards that are not quite in the system quite 100% correctly. So I've managed to cover 550 boards completely out of the 558. Yeah, I know there's one in there that's because if there's 4 unknowns plus 3, that's 7, right? There's still one other board, and I haven't found it yet. Which one it is that's causing a miss. But I think for overall use, that's pretty good, getting 550 out of 558 boards. Now let me just move this out of the way. So now when the code comes through and builds this list, it ensures that all vids, PIDs, product, manufacturer is in there. And if it encounters one where product and manufacturer, it will actually go to a fallback check where it actually goes to the website, CircuitPython download, and actually builds a big list of all the boards that are there to download. And from that, it extracts the manufacturer and the product name. And so if it's hitting this consultancy board right here, and this is actually one of them, right? It figures out that it should use the website names for product and manufacturer, and it plugs them in. Now, if this doesn't occur properly either, it will fall back to what's called the site path. Now, in the site path, if you look here, Adafruit, NeoKey, Trinky, M0, well, Adafruit is, let's see if I can, Adafruit right there is the company. Trinky, M0 is the product. So it can actually, on unknowns, it can actually do this and kind of hodgepodge a product and a manufacturer name into it. That's for only for the edge case of those 4 unknown manufacturers. It figures out what the manufacturers is by the site path. So I would say that the website needs a fix there. That would account for 4 more boards that I can cover more properly. Now, once this list is built, this metadata.json list, and put in, this is what gives it the much improved board pick. I'm kind of proud of it too. And then what I did is, once I had this board, I fed it back into AI to performance enhance it, and holy moly, did it do the job. So when I go to build boards.py here, right, and it goes through, it actually functionizes, it handles the edge cases, and there's notes in here too, right? So I even cover issues on the pins creation where the pins were in CSV files. Yeah, and I think that might account for 1 board. I'm not 100% sure. I might have to put another edge case in. But I think what's happening is that's a board that's not really practical to use anyway. And it goes through all this stuff, blah, 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 and writes it all out. And we end up with our metadata.json file. Now, I also, as I said, I cleaned up for Yarn. So one of the problems was in here, let's move that out of the way. If we go and look at the make file, right, he was doing this. Okay. npm install, run electron rebuild, build the stubs, and then package the file. Okay. I did have an issue where, for some strange reason, I don't know if it's still there. That's still there. VSCE, which is Visual Studio Code's package manager. It's kind of a tool to use to where you publish your package and stuff like that. I had to go and reinstall it a couple of times because it kept disappearing. Not sure why. But luckily it's fairly straightforward. Control R, npm, Control R, like so. You just say that. The -G means make it global to the npm environment. So if I open another shell window, it will still be available to me. And then, of course, this whole build system is tied into GitHub. So I have the Git, and you can see all the stuff done here. So I have a couple of things to change. Now, one thing I found out in here, I was editing the packages. Here, let me come down here to the package.json file. So I would edit this line right here. It turns out I actually don't have to. There is apparently a way where you use npm to update things like that. And you're supposed to actually remove the lock file before you build, because that thing will get built. If you change this, remove the lock file, and the lock file will get recreated anyway. So just close off boards here. So in our Git, I have 2 things to push to commit. So what you're supposed to do is, let's do a refresh to make sure. And what we're supposed to do here, the changes, we'll stage them all. And we'll do a commit. some tweaks to script files. Because that's really what I was just changing a couple of lines, removing one. I was having an issue with the actions feature in GitHub. It wasn't building this anymore correctly. And it turns out it's a Python problem, and I haven't fixed it yet. So I turned off actions anyway. And I just finished undoing some of the changes I did directly in GitHub. So you say, okay, I'll fix it. Yeah, save. And then you sync the one change. And now we're up to date on GitHub. And I can go over here and I can go refresh on code. See, some tweaks to the script file, right? It shows the change. So I had to publish all of this. Whoops, let's bring the browser back again just for a sec. I had to publish everything. So in order to do publishing, you have to have a marketplace, basically what they call an Azure Devs account. And then you have a marketplace thing. And then in the marketplace, you create a publisher, a unique publisher. In this case, it's me as W. Merkins. And then within it, you create a extension, you publish an extension to it. So you can see the CircuitPython extension here. According to this, it's had 198 downloads so far since I updated this version. And you can go into it and you can look at the funny graphs and stuff like that, and ratings and review. I only got one rating so far, 5 stars. So and you can do manage. So I've been pushing this into the marketplace since 2.1. So you can see on November 23rd, I started all this, and November 28th got the current one. So kind of waiting just for see if Visual Studio Code, if Adafruit comes out with 9.2.2. Now I would have to go and look at downloads like this. And you say a Pico, for example, is 9.2.2. So you can see in here, there's the board and there's the manufacturer. If the way I figured this out is if you go to F12 in Chrome and you look into here, so you say pick an element. Okay, so we're going to pick this element right there. All right. Well, you dig around in here and you find out the whole content. Let's repick an element. I think it was when I did this originally, I did the whole thing. No, I did it from the root, not particularly a board. Turn off that stupid phone version. So you look down here and it's like, yeah, like this, the selection. Yeah, so you get this right here. And if you look in here, you'll see things like data ID. And that Raspberry _Pi _Pico is, I think, like the site path. And then you got data name, the Pico, and then you got the data manufacturer, Raspberry Pi. And what I did is I asked AI to help me build code to extract this massive list. And it actually turned out to be very straightforward with a particular Python thing called, what was it? We go into here and we go to the top to our imports. It's called BS4, Beautiful Soup. Yeah, I didn't even know this thing even existed. But then again, there's so many ones that you don't know until you actually come across them. Well, what this does is helps you extract. So this whole thing right here is actually what walks this function, walks that whole thing and returns a list of manufacturers and products. You can see right here, name and manufacturer. So that turned out to be pretty cool. That's how I got a better master list of all the boards. And then I was looking at what I said is called the make MK files. So if we look at here and we look inside of CircuitPython and we look inside ports, and we'll pick one, let's say Raspberry Pi boards. There's those boards in here, right? So Adafruit, Arch, Challenger, Citron, MNOPQR. Oh, we passed it. Raspberry Pi Pico W, for example. And in here, you're going to find that pins file that's needed to define all the pins. And you're going to find that MK file, this guy right here. No, go away. So you can see in here, there's the vid, there's the PID, there's the product, there's the manufacturer. This is a good one. Now, they have some other variables in here that we don't care about. We only care about this section here. That's it. And if you look at the Raspberry Pi Pico W, remember I pointed out in the web page, Raspberry Pi Pico? Well, sure enough, let me just close this. Just a sec, I lost my place here. There. We close that and open this. See, this is the site path right there. That little guy. Right? Raspberry _Pi _Pico. And you can see as you saw in the MK file how they break it down. Right? Like so. So after doing all this, package.json I don't need. Delete the metadata. So once I got it all working, it's a lot cleaned up. It's a bit faster. I think actually a lot faster. And, well, I'll have to do benchmarks if I really want to know. But all help to the thing I talked about before, which was Bitto. I actually went and subscribed to Bitto. Because you can do things like this. If you take your code like this, you go Control A, you right click, you can actually explain this code, generate a comment, performance checks, style check, improve readability, right? You can do a whole bunch of things with the code. I'm not going to go around and screw this up, but it works pretty good. And once you start a particular chat conversation, so in here they will have a list of things you started talking on, like here. And what we do here is you can then ask it subtle questions. So once I had the code, I could say, oh, I need another edge case to do this and explain this. And this is the result I'm expecting. This is the result I actually got. And then it would write a modification for it. Now, generally, sometimes it would just say, change this one function section. But I would go and ask it, can you just give me the whole code again? Like the whole file? And it says, sure. And then it'll rebuild me a complete new version of it. And I just cut and paste it into here. So now I hope this people using this will help a lot with the install doesn't change or anything like that. It's just this is now CircuitPython v2. So if we go and get another Python here. So v2. It's interesting. It says 187 here, but it says 198 in the back end. And I did update the change log and stuff like that too, to reflect the work I've been doing. So I hope people like it. I really don't need this anymore. File, close, folder. And we will get rid of this. Too many Pythons open. I've been working on, can't kind of show it to you yet because I have the wrong code windows open. Porting the camera server. So this guy is actually running CircuitPython. And I've been slowly learning importing code over. One of the biggest ones I found was the pin changes. I had to figure out what they called the pins in CircuitPython versus what ESP was calling the pins. Because if you run it through a code conversion, sure, you get a Python version of the CircuitPython version of the code, but it doesn't work because the pin numbers are all wrong. And I had to modernize it a bit too. The way the ESP was doing web Wi-Fi activation was not in the way Adafruit was doing it. So in Adafruit, you would have the TOML file, and they didn't do it that way in ESP. They're old school. They actually embedded the credentials right into the code file. Not a good idea anymore. So I was working on, I haven't, and there's basically a Wi-Fi section I have to work on, a camera section I have to work on, a web server version I have to work on, right? So I've been working on different sections. The tricky thing too is I had to borrow basically one of these because some of the functions like ESP camera are actually in the UF2 firmware. They're not a thing you say. You might do an import of it, but you don't install the library per se. It's already in the board. And I had to find a board that actually had, the ESP2 camera library. So they tried, the AI just tried to use camera, and that doesn't exist that way more. If you're on a Pico and you're doing this, and you have one of those OV2660 breakout boards from Adafruit, you would use the OV library and image take library and stuff like that to get your camera. Whereas in the ESPs, they actually have a fully wrapper for the ESP camera. So that's what I've been kind of slicing around. I haven't forgotten about the matter stuff. I'm still thinking about it. It's my usual way. I'll think about it for quite a while, and then I'll go re-tackle it again and have better ideas. But I'm going to let it go at this. So if you're using the CircuitPython extension, you can just disable Joe's and go and install this one if you want. Also, if you want to clean up on your stuff, go find your... I did this test this, by the way, on Windows too, and it does work. I don't own a Mac, so I can't be 100% sure. But in the VS Code, in the extensions, you can erase, for example, Joe, and you can erase, for example, me, right, to completely clear the extension and then reinstall it again if you want. Right? I just don't do it while VS Code is using them, or VS Code is basically open. You have to do them if you're not using them, so to speak. Open file handles, that's usual stuff. So I will let you go, and do give me a note about how it works for you. I'm really curious for Mac users how it works. I have no idea. I mean, Microsoft says it all compiled correctly for it, and it is available for it. So, goodbye.